Hello, I'm Tim Baarslag. I want to tell you a little story, actually, about how to be happy with the deal you've got. Whether that's your salary, whether that's your house, or whether actually in love. Um, Somebody turn on the screen. All right. So what you see here is my house. This is really my house, actually. It's the first house I've ever bought, and I'm very happy with it. Um, it's in Amsterdam, and it was not easy to get this house because of course, the housing market is crazy. But I'm very happy that I have it. But I had to go through a very stressful and complex negotiation to get it. Not just about the price of the house, but also about the date of transfer, about financing options. I even had to negotiate whether the floor could stay in. And actually, I don't know many people that enjoy such a negotiation, right? Whether it's a job negotiation or bargaining on a market square, people don't like it. And although we all negotiate, literature shows that people are actually really bad at it. We often leave money on the table because we cannot compute all the possible deals, and also our emotions and biases get in the way. As Bob Metcalf said, we might win the argument, but that might not win us the deal. So that's what my research is about. Wouldn't it be great if we could understand negotiations a bit better mathematically? And wouldn't it be great to have computers that could help us with these negotiations, or even do them on our behalf? But to be even doing that, we need to understand how negotiations work mathematically. So this is how we normally represent a negotiation in general, with our utility and the opponent utility on both axes. And every dot here is an outcome that specifies values for multiple objectives. For instance, a real estate contract, right? And the desired or the Pareto optimal outcomes are all the way in the top right. These are the win-win outcomes that you're looking for. And what makes this different from, say, multi-objective optimization or game theory is that this is a game with private information. It's interactive. There's moves. So you might make a move that's very good for you, and you slowly explore this space of agreements together. And the tricky part is there's private information, right? So you might have a set of acceptable outcomes for yourself, and so does your opponent. And then the intersection of these two is the zone of agreement. And one of these bids will be the eventual outcome. Now, which one that is, that depends on who's the best negotiator or who has the best negotiation algorithm. And this is hard because you have to accept at the right time, and that best time to accept depends not just on the current offer, but also on what you can expect in the future to happen in order to know what you have to do. For instance, suppose I start with a good bid for myself, and the opponent starts in their corner. This is very typical, right? And we make a small concession, and then the other one makes a huge concession toward us. Okay, that's a good start. So we continue with a small concession, and then something weird happens. We get an unfortunate bid. And so what's going on here? Well, actually, our opponent tried to make a concession, but just couldn't because they don't know exactly our preferences. So it actually made it worse for both of us. But the idea is just to stay cool, keep on making concessions, and then wait until your opponent finally makes a concession that's also good for you. And that's then the moment to say, yes, I want this outcome, and you accept. Okay, so this can be seen as a sequential decision-making problem, right? Of when you want to say stop and I want it. So in simple cases, for instance, this leads to a recurrence relation, which the value of having J bids depends on the current offer, and you can simply take that. Or when it's the expected value of doing essentially the same, but just with one round less, right? So how do you choose now the right time? Well, the first one to think about this in a systematic way was the famous astronomer, Johannes Kepler. In 1613, Kepler wrote a long letter to his friend Stralendorf, in which he described a great problem he faced. Kepler had actually lost his wife and set about finding a new wife from a set of candidates. And he would interview 11 candidates. And in order not to hurt the feelings of his potential wives, he would interview them sequentially, as you would, and make a decision to marry them or not before moving on to the next candidate. That seems fair, right? He spent 2 years actually trying to find his ideal woman and kept notes of his small disappointments as he was in the romantic market. The first candidate, he wrote, had stinking breath, so she was out. The second one had been brought up in luxury that was above her station, so that didn't work very well either. And it only got worse for him. The third one was okay, but she turned out to be engaged already. But luckily, number 4 and number 5 were actually good candidates. And he could stop already with one of them. But he thought, can you really do that with 6 candidates left unseen? What to do now? And in fact, he deliberated for so long that both got impatient and they took themselves out of the running. So his problem was actually that of any eligible bachelor, right? How do you know when you should stop and settle for what you have and stop looking for other candidates? So Kepler's problem is now known as an instance of the optimal stopping theory, a stochastic decision problem of determining to accept among offers that appear sequentially and randomly. And you can show that in the simple case is a well-known result, that you have to blindly decline the first 37%, 1 over E, of the candidates, without even thinking about it. And then after that, you have to pick the best candidate that you meet after it. That's the optimal thing to do. And in practice, of course, you don't always know the number of options that you will have. But it's possible to extend this theory also to non-fixed numbers, to population learning, even to recall of previous options. And it turns out there's plenty of applications of this theory too. A good example is autonomous vehicles that we heard about so much already. In the future, we no longer need traffic lights on the intersections, but cars will negotiate jointly on who gets priority on an intersection. They can also help us share our neighbor's energy in a fair and efficient way, for instance. Or trading of goods and procurement, that's something I work on, where you have to choose wisely between offers of all sorts of different suppliers. And in all those cases, you get multiple offers actually from different parties at the same time. So in terms of optimal stopping, that actually means you get multiple lines of marriage candidates, right? And that's not equivalent to having one queue, if you think about it, right? Because the current candidate in one queue acts sort of as a backup to the other queue and vice versa, right? So how to solve this is actually still an open problem that I'm working on, and I would love to discuss with all of you afterward. But before I end, you might be wondering, what happened to Kepler, right? Well, Kepler was so crippled by his indecision that after 2 years, he had gone through all his candidates, all wooed out. He decided that maybe he'd done it all wrong. Was it divine providence or my own moral guilt, he wrote, which for 2 years or longer tore me in so many different directions and made me consider the possibility of such different unions? After a period of reflection, Kepler came crawling back to option number 5 and proposed to her. And she said yes. In fact, he could have saved himself all that heartache had he followed the cold mathematical theory of optimal stopping, right? Because she was actually the best option at that point, so choosing the 5th candidate is exactly what you would expect from optimal stopping theory. And it turned very well for Kepler in the end. He became extremely happy in his second marriage, much happier, in fact, than in his first marriage. Thank you.